They say there's a place where the dead still bargain, where the air smells of burnt cola nuts and forgotten names. A place that opens only after midnight, when no cock crows and even the moon hides her face. The elders call it Oja Oru, the night market, but they don't speak of it loudly, 'cause the market listens. In the old lands of southern Ghana, under the shadow of an ancient forest, there lived a man named Tarek. He was a trader by day and a wanderer by night, known for his cunning and his hunger. Not hunger for food but for more. More wealth, more status, more proof that he was greater than the village that had forgotten his father's name. Tarek believed in one truth: the world belongs to those who dare. So when the old stories reached his ears, whispers of a market that traded not in coins but in desires, he laughed. He didn't believe in curses, only in opportunity. But greed, in all its disguises, is a kind of faith. And that night, when the wind changed direction and the forest began to hum with unseen life, Tarek decided to go find the place that should not exist. What he didn't know was that the market had already opened for him. It had been waiting for the man who would bargain not just with gold, but with his soul. Tarek was a man of the earth, broad-shouldered, sun-darkened, eyes that had seen too much. He lived in a village called Kujaro, where the dust clung to your ankles like memory and nothing ever changed. He sold charms, spices, sometimes lies, whatever filled his pouch. But life had grown smaller. The fields had turned dry, the river's song had gone silent, and people spoke more of famine than faith. Tarek hated the sight of their hopeless faces. One night, at the drinking hut, a traveling griot, an old storyteller, arrived from the north. He spoke of a place where traders gathered long after the living had gone to sleep. A place hidden between worlds, where gold was cheap, where hunger could be fed with a whisper. But every bargain came with a price written in the currency of the soul. The men laughed it off. But Tarek didn't. He followed the griot outside, his voice low and mocking. "Where does one find this market?" he asked. The old man looked at him for a long time. His eyes were clouded but sharp beneath. "It finds you," the griot said, "when the heart grows too hungry." That night, as the moon rose red and swollen, Tarek couldn't sleep. He walked to the edge of the forest, where the baobab trees stood like silent giants, guarding the secrets of the earth. The wind carried strange sounds, bells, whispers, drums that beat in no rhythm he knew. And then he saw it, a flicker of light between the trees, faint, golden, pulsing like breath. Tarek stepped closer, his body trembling though he wouldn't admit fear even to himself. As he moved deeper, the air changed. The forest no longer smelled of dust and bark. It smelled of roasted yams, sweet oil, and incense. He reached a clearing, and there before him stood the market. Dozens of stalls stretched into darkness, shimmering, shifting like they were made from mist. Lanterns burned with blue fire. Figures walked slowly between the stalls, their shapes human but wrong, too tall, too pale, or too still. A woman with no eyes sold beads that whispered when they touched. A child with the feet of a goat poured black honey into jars that breathed. And everywhere voices murmured, "Trade, trade, trade." Tarek's heart pounded. He should have run. But greed feels a lot like wonder, and wonder is what traps men first. A hooded vendor beckoned him closer. On his table were objects that glowed faintly, coins that wept, rings that bled light, a bowl filled with reflections. "Gold for gold," the voice rasped. "But what will you give to keep it?" Tarek hesitated. "I have silver, salt, trinkets." The vendor laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "We do not trade in things. We trade in weight, the weight of your heart." Tarek felt something cold crawl up his spine. He stepped back. But the crowd had thickened. Dozens of figures surrounded him now, smiling with mouths too wide, eyes too deep. He turned, and the forest was gone. Only stalls, only light, only night. He shouted, "I want to leave." The hooded vendor leaned forward. "You will. When the sun rises. But first you must buy something." Tarek's breath shook. He wanted to wake up, to tear through the veil and run. But then he saw a gleam, a small idol of gold, its shape that of a man kneeling, holding a flame in his hands. It was beautiful, ancient, holy. He could see his fortune reflected in it. His name remembered, his hunger ended. He reached for it. The vendor's hand caught his wrist. "Every buyer must give an offering," it whispered. "A piece of what they love most." Tarek smirked. "I have nothing I love." The vendor smiled beneath the hood. "Then we will take hope." A chill flooded Tarek's chest. For a moment, his thoughts went blank, like something had been scooped out of his mind. But then, just as quickly, the feeling passed. He laughed. Done. The idol was his. And as he turned to leave, the market began to fade. The stalls folded into smoke. The lights winked out one by one, until there was only forest. And Tarek stood alone beneath the fading moon. He looked down. The idol gleamed in his hand. Solid, heavy, real. He had done it. He had taken something from a place that wasn't supposed to exist. The next morning, Tarek returned to Kujaro like a man reborn. He held the idol high for all to see, claiming he had found it buried in the sand, proof that he was destined for greatness. He sold his wares, bought a new hut, and soon people came to him for luck. They said the idol blessed anyone who touched it. He let them believe that. But in truth he had stopped sleeping. At night, he heard the sound of bells, faint, distant, like a market calling through a dream. Sometimes, he woke to find footprints of ash outside his door. And when he looked into the idol's golden surface, he saw faces, not his reflection but others. Dozens of others. Watching. Whispering. The more he earned, the worse it grew. He began to see the vendors from the market in the corners of the streets, a pale hand arranging fruit, a pair of glowing eyes beneath a hood. No one else saw them. One evening he went to Elder Temba, the village priest. Temba listened quietly as Tarek spoke of the market, the idol, and the strange dreams. When he finished, the elder's face had gone gray. "You traded with the Oja Oru," he said softly. "That market is not of this world. It opens when the moon hides, when the living forget their place among the dead." Tarek tried to laugh it off, but his throat was dry. "What must I do?" "Return what you took," Temba said. "Before the market calls again. Because when it does, it will not sell to you. It will collect." Tarek left before dawn, carrying the idol wrapped in cloth. He journeyed back toward the forest, each step heavier than the last. But when he reached the clearing, there was nothing. No light, no whispers, only silence. He screamed into the darkness. "Take it back. I don't want it." His voice echoed, but no one answered. That night, the moon vanished completely. And somewhere in the forest, bells began to ring. The market had opened again. The days after Tarek's return from the forest were filled with sunlight and whispers. First, nothing seemed wrong. He sold the idol to a merchant from the city and used the money to buy new clothes. Rich indigo robes, gold-threaded sandals, a leather belt carved with foreign patterns. He walked through Kujaro with the easy arrogance of a man who believed the gods had finally looked his way. The villagers began to speak of him with a strange mixture of awe and envy. "He has broken the curse of poverty," said one. "He found something the spirits left behind," murmured another. Even the chief sent for him, offering him a place at the council table. But when Tarek looked in the mirror, a polished copper dish he'd bought to admire his reflection, he saw someone else staring back. The eyes were darker, hollowed, as if a part of him had been scooped away. That night, he dreamt of the market again. It appeared in fragments: the shimmer of blue lanterns, the smell of pepper and smoke, the ringing of 1,000 tiny bells. He saw the hooded vendor standing at his stall, waiting. The vendor lifted its hand, palm open, and something dripped from it. Gold. Or blood. When Tarek woke, his palms were wet. And they smelled faintly metallic. He told himself it was nothing, sweat perhaps. But the next morning when he walked to the well, the children of the village stepped aside. Not out of respect, out of fear. "Tarek," one whispered, "your shadow, it's moving the wrong way." He looked down. And yes, as the sun rose in the east, his shadow stretched not behind him but toward the light, crawling, bending, as though trying to escape him. For days the sun seemed dimmer, the nights longer, the forest closer. Still he tried to ignore it. He had money now. People bowed to him. And yet, every coin he earned felt heavier, as though it carried whispers from hands he didn't recognize. Sometimes he found strange objects in his hut: beads, feathers, broken mirrors, things he'd never bought. The smell of incense hung in the air even when no candle burned. And one morning, he woke to find the idol back on his table. He froze. He had sold it, seen the merchant ride off with it on a donkey's back. But there it was, gleaming faintly, as if it had been waiting. He didn't touch it for hours. Finally, trembling, he carried it to Elder Temba again. The old man's face turned grave. "You should have buried it," he said. "Not traded it, not flaunted it. You have walked into the place between promises and punishments. Now it follows you." Tarek felt anger rise. "I only wanted to live better. What crime is that?" Temba's voice was quiet. "Greed is not a crime, my son. It is a hunger the gods use to measure men. You were measured. And you were found hollow." Tarek stormed out. But the elder's words clung to him like flies. That night, as he sat alone, the wind began to change again. It came through his window in waves, carrying the faint hum of voices, buying, selling, bartering. The sound of the Oja Oru, the market of night. He covered his ears, but the noise only grew clearer. And then he heard the voice. "Trader Tarek," it whispered. "Our deal is unfinished." He looked around, no one there. But the idol had begun to move. It pulsed, the flame in the figure's hand flickering with cold light. He backed away. And then, through the window, he saw lanterns, blue and gold, flickering between the trees beyond his hut. The market had come closer. He ran into the night, shouting into the darkness. "What do you want from me? I gave you hope. You took it already." The voice answered, though no mouth spoke. "You cannot give what was never yours to trade. You took from the dead, and the dead always collect their debts." From that night on, Tarek began to decay in ways no one could explain. His hair grayed in days. His nails blackened. He could not eat. Food turned to ash in his mouth. And when he looked into the idol again, he saw himself, standing in the market, surrounded by stalls, his hands outstretched, offering something invisible. The worst part was not the haunting. It was the waiting. He started locking his doors at sunset, lighting candles made from palm oil and salt, praying to gods he had never believed in. But nothing helped. The villagers began to whisper again, this time in fear. His fortune came from the shadows, they said. He bought something he should have left alone. Even the chief told him not to come to the council anymore. Children no longer played near his hut. And at night, he could hear their parents warning them, "Don't look toward Tarek's house after dark. That's where the market walks." One night rain came, thick, black, smelling of iron. Thunder rolled across the sky like a god clearing its throat. Tarek sat by the door, holding the idol in his lap. He was done running. He wanted answers. He whispered into the storm, "Show yourself." Lightning flashed, and for a brief, terrible moment he saw them. Figures standing beyond the gate, motionless, their shapes blurred by rain but unmistakably human. The vendors. The woman with no eyes. The child with goat's feet. And behind them, taller than them all, the hooded one, holding out an empty hand. The hand that had once held his. The bells began to ring again, not in his head this time, but in the air itself. A marketplace building itself out of the storm. Tarek clutched the idol to his chest, shaking. "I won't go back," he screamed. "You can't take me." But the hooded figure only tilted its head. And from beneath the hood came that same rasping voice. "You already belong to us, traitor. The market that opens only at night never closes its books." The thunder broke. The lamps in his hut went out. Darkness swallowed everything, except the faint golden light of the idol, now burning brighter as if alive. It whispered his name. And the voice was his own. Rain lashed the thatched roof of Tarek's hut like fingers clawing to get in. Each drop hissed against the ground, and the wind carried voices, whispers of barter and bidding. Tarek stood barefoot, trembling, clutching the golden idol that now throbbed like a heartbeat. The air was thick with smoke that had no fire. His reflection in the window flickered between his own face and something hollow-eyed, grinning, inhuman. The sound of bells began again, faint at first, then louder, closer, until the entire night seemed to vibrate with their rhythm. And then silence. The rain stopped. Tarek opened the door. Where his yard should have been, a vast market now spread under a moonless sky, lit by hundreds of blue and gold lanterns swaying in the wind. Stalls of bone and silk lined crooked paths that twisted in impossible directions. Smoke rose from cauldrons filled with glowing fruits, whispering scrolls and vials that breathed. He saw faces. Not human, not anymore. Vendors with masks carved from skulls, eyes like molten wax. Children made of shadow. Women with mouths sewn shut, yet their laughter still rang through the air. And there, at the center, stood the hooded figure. The vendor. Its robe shimmered like oil on water. Its hands were long and jointless, each fingertip tipped with gold. Around its neck hung trinkets, teeth, coins, feathers, each pulsing faintly as if alive. Tarek stepped forward, his feet sinking into wet earth that whispered with every step. The vendor spoke, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "Welcome back, traitor." "I didn't come here," Tarek shouted. "You brought me. You came the night you took what was not yours," the voice answered calmly. "You came when you traded a soul for silver." Tarek held up the idol. "Take it." "I don't want it anymore." The vendor tilted its head. "We never gave it for you to keep. It was your receipt." The idol's flame flared white, and suddenly Tarek was standing in a different place. The same market, but older, decayed. The stalls were collapsing, the vendors now skeletal. The smell of rot filled his lungs. And there, hanging from wooden poles, were men. Dozens of them, their faces frozen in expressions of horror, each wearing clothes of wealth, each clutching an idol. Their mouths moved, whispering in unison. "We traded. We took. We paid." Tarek staggered backward. No, I didn't know." But the vendor raised its hand, silencing him. "Knowledge is no shield, traitor. Every bargain is a vow. You vowed your life for gold, your soul for silver. The market remembers." The lanterns flared, bathing the stalls in a ghostly glow. Tarek looked around. The vendors had gathered, circling him. Their faces merged and shifted, forming a single expression of hunger. The air was filled with the chime of coins falling endlessly, echoing like rain. Then the vendor spoke again. "Tonight your account closes." It extended its hand, and the idol lifted from Tarek's grip, floating between them. Its flame began to spread, not outward but inward into Tarek's chest. He screamed as fire crawled under his skin. His veins glowed like molten lines. His reflection in the idol showed him burning from the inside out. He dropped to his knees. "Please. I'll return everything. I'll warn the others." The vendor's tone softened, almost gentle. "You cannot return what was never yours. But you can still serve." "Serve?" "Yes. Every trader must stand behind his stall." Tarek's breath caught. "No." But the world around him began to twist. His hut, his village, his memories, all peeling away like smoke. The stalls of the market stretched upward, their wooden frames reshaping, absorbing him. His legs stiffened, his arms twisted into wood and rope, his skin splitting into grain. He screamed until his voice became part of the wind. In place of the idol, a lantern now burned inside his chest. When the transformation was done, Tarek stood frozen. His eyes hollow, his lips parted in a silent offer. Behind his stall lay trinkets gleaming faintly under the ghostly lanterns. Coins, charms, and a single idol carved of bone. A new vendor had joined the market. The vendor, the one who had brought him here, turned to the others and said, "Every bargain needs balance. The market grows when mortals hunger." And as if in answer, faintly from beyond the forest came a sound, the distant hum of human footsteps, curious travelers wandering too far into the night. The vendor smiled beneath the hood. "Business," it whispered, "is good." When dawn came, the village of Kujaro awoke to an eerie silence. The rain had vanished. The ground was dry, as though it had never fallen. But near the edge of the forest, where Tarek's hut once stood, there was nothing but a circle of ash and the faint scent of burnt gold. Elder Temba stood there, leaning on his staff, eyes full of sorrow. He had warned him. He had warned them all. The young people of the village gathered, whispering, "What happened? Where is Tarek?" Temba said nothing. Instead, he pointed to the forest and spoke in a low, trembling voice. "When you hear bells after dark," he said, "lock your doors. Do not follow the sound. The market calls to those who crave too deeply. It opens for the greedy and closes over the lost." They looked at him wide-eyed. "And if someone offers you a bargain you cannot refuse," he added. "Remember, the night never gives for free." That evening, as the last light bled from the sky, a boy fetching water near the river swore he saw lanterns flickering between the trees, blue and gold. And somewhere, faintly, a voice called out, "Come, trader. Come see what the night will buy." The next morning broke over Kujaro village with a light that felt wrong, pale, colorless, almost afraid to touch the earth. The birds did not sing. The trees along the forest line leaned slightly inward, as if bowing toward something unseen. Temba, the elder, walked slowly toward the ruins of Tarek's hut. What remained was little more than blackened soil and fragments of clay pots melted into glass. Yet when he knelt and touched the earth, it was still warm, faintly pulsing as though something beneath it still breathed. He murmured a prayer in a tongue that had not been spoken in many years. It was not a prayer for Tarek. It was a prayer for the living, for those who would come after and forget, as they always did. By mid-morning, villagers began gathering around him. Children whispered that they'd seen lights in the forest again, dancing between the trees like eyes that never blinked. One of the men said, "It was just the storm. The night played tricks." But Temba's voice cracked through the murmurs. "No storm leaves the smell of silver and ash. No rain sings in the voice of bells." He turned toward the forest, his eyes sharp and full of the knowledge that comes from losing too much. "The market has opened again." The crowd went silent. He told them of how the world has many markets, some for food, some for gold, and some for souls. He said that every act of greed, every jealous wish, was like knocking on a door in the dark, and sometimes the door answers. When he finished speaking, nobody moved. Nobody dared to ask questions. That night they buried a small clay jar in the earth. Not because they had a body, but because they needed to bury something. Inside it, they placed a handful of sand from Tarek's yard, a single coin, and a wooden carving of a lantern. The burial was not for the dead. It was for remembrance. Months passed. The rains returned. The forest grew thick again, swallowing the path that led to where the market had stood. But some nights, when the moon hid behind clouds, villagers still heard faint sounds drifting from the trees, like the hum of distant voices, and the occasional clink of coins falling softly to the ground. Children were told not to wander after dark. Lovers were told not to make promises under the new moon. Traders were warned to close their stalls before sunset. But as time does, memory faded. Years later, when hunger struck the land again, when drought cracked the soil and desperation filled men's hearts, people began whispering of the old tales once more. "Do you remember the story of the man who traded with shadows?" they asked. "What if the market still waits? What if it offers food for a price?" Temba, now old and nearly blind, heard those whispers from his hut. And on the last night of his life, he told his great-grandson the truth no one else remembered. He said, "The market never closes, child. It sleeps, waiting for footsteps that sound like greed. It calls in hunger, it hums in sorrow, it feeds on need. When you hear the bells, cover your ears. When you see the lanterns, look away. Because once you step inside, the bargains never end. Even death becomes a trade." The boy nodded, but like all the young, he didn't truly understand. One night, years after Temba's passing, a traveler from another village lost his way in the forest. His lantern went out. The path vanished behind the mist. Then, through the darkness, he saw lights, dozens of them, flickering gold and blue. He heard laughter and the sound of merchants calling. Curious, he followed. And there it was, a marketplace glowing in the center of the forest, its stalls alive, its vendors smiling. At the nearest stall, a figure leaned forward, its eyes hollow, its mouth moving in a silent invitation. The traveler stepped closer and gasped. The vendor's face was wooden, carved from a tree, but its features were unmistakable, human once, proud once. Its chest held a glowing lantern, and behind its still lips, faint embers burned. A name had been carved into the wood. Tarek. The traveler turned to run, but the sound of bells filled the air. The forest shifted. The stalls surrounded him. And in the distance, the hooded vendor watched, smiling beneath the veil of darkness. "Welcome, trader," it whispered. "The market is open." In the end, the market that opens only at night is not a story about ghosts. It's about the hunger that lives inside every human heart. The greed that makes men bargain with shadows. The desperation that blinds them to the price of their wishes. The foolish hope that wealth can be gained without loss. Tarek's fate is not punishment, it is reflection. The market does not choose its victims. It only answers their call. And perhaps that is the truest curse of all, that evil does not chase us through the dark. We walk willingly into its light. The market that opens only at night reminds us that some doors should never be opened, some deals should never be made, and that every shadow you follow may be a hand reaching to pull you under. If you ever hear bells when the wind is still, don't look back, don't speak, don't trade, because the night remembers every bargain, and the market always opens again. If you enjoyed this tale of greed, spirits, and the price of desire, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more African folklore every week, where every story hides a warning and every warning hides a curse.